So I kind of like that you don't know who I am.
Is that mad? Should I know who you are?
Well, that depends who you ask. The correct answer is yes.
No.
It doesn't faze me at all. Sometimes people get on the interview and they're like, somebody on their team set it up and they're like, hey, what are we doing here today? You know, they don't even know they're going to be interviewed. So you knew that you were going to be on a podcast, so you're in the top 50 percentile of prepared. But I think preparing for these things is dumb. Your whole career is preparation for your interviews.
Yeah. Well, some people can't do off the cuff. Me, I've just been in this industry so long. There's not really anything you're going to ask me that's probably I haven't been asked before or is not top of mind.
Right.
Right. You'll get a lot of opinions, whether they're good or bad. We'll have to figure that out ourselves.
Tim Conkle, the man, the myth, the spiky-haired legend. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me.
We were just chatting that, let me tell you real quick how I heard about the 20. I cold called one of your acquisitions in 2022, I think.
Wow.
And I was inviting him to an event, like a workshop I was doing. And he's like, what is this? And I was like, yeah, we do sales training, blah, blah, blah. He's like, well, I'm a member of the 20. And I was like, is this some speakeasy I don't know about in Oklahoma or wherever he was? And he was like, no, I mean, they have a bunch of sales stuff. And I was like, what are you talking about? I just never heard of you. Then I looked you up and I was like, oh, they're like a platform of some kind. So maybe what we'll do, and maybe we'll save it for an offline conversation later, is I want to hear more about what you actually are doing to help, like what you're doing internally for like post-acquisition organic growth, because that's really interesting to me. But I heard about you out in the wild. And, I've seen you on, Jeff is a good buddy of mine. I've seen you on his podcast. We were just mentioning Katie Vreeland is a great mutual friend who's also a friend of the podcast who's been on the show. So I think I want to jump directly into some of the weeds with you on how to grow, how to sell managed services.
Yeah.
In case anybody hasn't cold called one of your MSPs and doesn't know who you are, do you want to real quick just let the people know who you are, what you do?
So the 20 is... easiest way to look at it, it's just a large group of MSP that got together that said, hey, we're going to do everything the same way. Why? To get the upside, one, of footprint across the U.S. Two, I've said this for a long time, most MSPs are a bad business decision. So it was a way to move a lot of MSPs into a different way of selling. First you have to have a good product. Most MSPs do. They make computers talk and all that stuff. What they don't have is the business side.
Yeah.
And so I had taught people how to make their phones ring for a long time using Google pay-per-click. And what I found out in that is you can make their phones ring, but if everything else is not working, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And so it was our stab at creating this organization that literally executed. You've got all kinds of companies out there that sell training to do this or that. I wanted to do the execution side of it because one thing, if you've been around MSPs very long, they don't execute. I mean, they talk about it, but they don't execute.
Yeah.
And so the 20 was kind of that. You had all these MSPs doing the same things over and over and over. And I always use this. If you had 10 MSPs in the room, all 10 use a PSA or a ticketing system. The problem is they do it 10 times, 10 different ways. They buy it 10 times. They pay minimums 10 times. They have to set it up 10 times. They have to upgrade it 10 times. They have to fix it 10 times when it breaks. Would it be a novel idea for 10 MSPs to just say, why don't we do this once?
Right.
Now take that out to RMMs, security tools, all the way out to a help desk. Why would 10 MSPs build 10 separate help desks?
Mm-hmm.
No economy of scale. And so that was really the beginning stages of the 20. Now, once they start looking all the same, the next thing is you're better off together.
Right.
So you start buying them and you start rolling them up, which creates a really cool wealth strategy. And it typically does away with most problems that most MSPs have, especially when they're small.
Right.
So there's a long way in you what the 20 is.
Yeah, no, I like it. Let me ask you, do you think of the 20 first and foremost as an acquisition platform, or do you think of it more like a collaboration?
I think it's both. I think my personal opinion is why would you ever acquire something you don't know a lot about? And that's what typically happens in this industry. People look for an MSP to buy, and they do it's typically as financial. Well, I want to do culture. I want to do financial. I want to do how they sell, all those things. I want to know all those things beforehand. And that's what the 20 really does. So the collaboration side, or the side that kind of puts everybody on the same level playing. Think about this for a minute. How does a $1 million MSP, how do they compete with a $100 million MSP? Well, they don't. They never move up stack. The 20 was our answer. It was, hey, we can build this huge footprint and not own it. Everybody do everything the same way, where if an end client was looking for an MSP that can handle an office in New York, San Francisco, Dallas, Houston, and a variety of other places, we could say, yeah, one throat to choke, one place to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was a way of creating a level playing field for any MSP.
Right. And you've been in this industry how long now?
Since 1992.
Amazing. So you've been through all the evolutions of it. What's interesting that I find about guys who've been in the business for a long time is I feel like there's kind of two archetypes of that trajectory. One is, oftentimes people get into technology because they actually enjoy change.
Yeah.
Usually it's because they enjoy learning, but sometimes they're like, well, I like that. I like learning the thing nobody's ever done before. And that once you get addicted to that feeling, you're going to do great in this world, right? But what I also find is that some guys, they find an evolution, or there's one horizontal marker in the industry that they relate to so strongly that they end up culturally and mentally freezing in time.
Big time.
Do you know what I mean?
100% know what you mean.
So then 20 years later, you've got these guys who are like, I've been making $1 million a year in EBITDA. My wife has everything she wants. My house is paid off. My kids are all playing polo at their private schools. I don't need anything else. So they kind of they hit an echelon of success that matches they satiate their aspirations. And then they just kind of stop developing as human beings because they're like, why would I learn anything else? But then they actually end up deprecating in their value, and they become a liability to their clients.
100%. They literally get stuck in time. And the worst thing that can happen to somebody is fall into the lifestyle thing. And forget the lifestyle. Because what happens when, I just heard a statistic that 60% of IT company owners are graying out. I'm not saying that because I have gray hair. I'm not graying out yet. I've got a lot of energy. But 60%. Now, what happens when the business was your lifestyle? You've built it to a place that it's not worth anything.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, that $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 a year that you made is going to stop.
Yeah. And
they haven't planned for it. They haven't saved for it.
Right.
They literally thought that this was just going to be their world forever. And it's half the reason why the 20 exists is, okay, what do you do? Think about this for a minute. MSPs are sitting on a gold mine. They just don't know it. It's like the gold rush back in California. You had guys come in with pans and they pan for gold, very slow, but they can make a living. Then you had these guys come in with these big machines that they run the things down in the water. It would pull all the gravel and stuff up into it and then separate the gold and do the work of 50 men. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And so in doing that, that's kind of what this industry is like. It's that gold mine, but everybody's still panning with a pan. I tell this to a lot of people at conferences. If I had 50 MSPs sitting in the room, all 50 were $1 million top line, 20% EBITDA, 200,000 at the bottom. That means if they're worth a 5x multiple, which is probably kind of close, they're worth $1 million. So individually, those 50 people could sell their company, get $1 million. We can all celebrate. But think about this. If all they decided to do was get over their ego and become one company, I could take those same 50 with the stroke of a pen and create $100 million out of thin air by putting them together. And that's what this industry doesn't understand. either the MSP is going to make that or someone else is going to make it. It's their choice. But why in the world would you build a company for 20, 25 years and not maximize the value of it at your exit?
Yeah.
And the funny thing is, a lot of people say, well, I'm not selling my company. So I always start, before I even say that, I always start and say, okay, if I offered you $50 million for your company today, by show of hands, who would sell their company in the room? Every hand goes up.
Sure.
I'm like, okay, so the question is not whether you will sell your company, it's the price.
Right.
So because and you're right, they get stuck. But it's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy, because 90 to 99% is engineers. What's an engineer like to do? 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 3. What does an entrepreneur want to do? 3, 2, 1, 3, 2, 1, 3, 7, 5. Where did 7 come from? That wasn't even in the equation. We don't give a shit. We threw it in there. Right?
Yeah. Right.
And so you have very few, and I typically find that salespeople are the key. If you're a sales owner, in other words, you can sell, and trust me, if they sell traditional IT and they can be successful at it, dude, they're a rock star. Because IT, the way it's done, the majority of the time, even today, is a bad business decision, period. And I've had a lot of people question me, no way. So I proved it to them. I proved to them why people buy the lowest price. It's, and everybody says, well, you got to show value. Well, what is your value? Tell me the difference. What's different about you? And they can't say it because they all say the same things.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got engineers that do not like to be told what to do because they think they're 100% correct in the way that they build their machine.
I need a therapist couch to lay back, and I need to work through all of this with you, because you're talking to a sales coach.
Yeah.
People pay me money for advice.
Yeah.
And then they tell me it's wrong.
100%.
And I said, what is the right advice? And they say, everything I'm already doing. And I go, but isn't everything you're already doing the reason you're here? Like I say all the time, your best ideas got you every problem that you have.
Yeah.
So you came to me because your ideas weren't working. I gave you a new idea and you said, I would rather do my idea. Then I'll save you the money. Why don't you write me a check for 20 grand and get the hell out of here? And we can not have to talk to each other. And the exchange would be just as valuable for you.
Yeah.
Right? I want to ask you this question. And later, to be honest, I want to get into all the nuts and bolts of the 20, because I have a bunch of questions about the acquisition model. This probably isn't the format for that, but I want to ask you, what are you actually, it's a twofold question.
Yeah.
What strategies are you kind of bullish on for organic growth in the future? And what are you doing in the 20? Like, what are you actually doing with your network and your acquisitions to help them gain organic growth post-acquisition?
Yeah. So, easy question, easy answer.
Mm-hmm.
There's only 3 things. I tell MSPs, if you can learn 3 things and throw everything else away. Now, most MSPs get their head wrapped around the axle with tools.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like, if you met a guy that has dug ditches for 30 years, he uses a shovel and a pick, and he says, yeah, but I can be really precise, and I don't make any big mistakes like I would with a trencher. In other words, they have an excuse for doing it the old way, which is archaic, and you can't. So they how they get where they are is very understandable. But there's only 3 things. Only 3 things to create a company of any size you want. And if they'll concentrate on those 3 things, that's all you need to do. First, lead gen. You have to make your phone ring. I don't care if you're the best salesman on the face of the earth. If nobody ever finds you or nobody ever calls you or nobody ever gives you the opportunity to sell, it doesn't matter. You can be the best salesperson on the face of the earth. But if nobody asks,
yes,
okay, it's sales. You have to have a sales process. It's funny because MSPs, if you asked, what's the number one thing you need? I guarantee almost every MSP will say more leads.
Leads, yes, always.
But the funny thing is they don't do anything with the ones they get. They literally get a lead, set an appointment up.
Yeah.
They go to that appointment. The people say, we're not interested. They create a relationship. And because the guy or the lady wasn't ready, they just ghost them for eternity.
Right.
Literally, that customer or potential customer has to call them to re-engage.
Yeah.
I always say every no runs to a yes, every yes runs to a no. The more length you put in your sales process, the more likely you are to get a no. And if you'll always stay in front of people, you're more likely to get a yes than a no. So,
yes.
And then the third thing is you've got to be able to scale the company. You've got to be able to service delivery. Now, we execute on two of these.
Okay.
Very well. We execute on on two of these. Sales is easy if you have a product worth selling or something that can resonate with a customer. Think about this for a minute. Typical MSP or typical end client literally interviews 3 companies on average.
Right.
Now, if all 3 go in and say the exact same thing, we have literally done a disservice to the client.
Yeah.
Why?
The only thing they have to go on is the price because they can't tell you apart.
It is the only thing. And that's the biggest problem with, now think about this, phone rings. In our case, we'd say 20 MSP, can we help you? We're looking for an IT company. The minute we say yes, and they acknowledge that yes, and they set an appointment with us, what do we know that we don't have to talk about when we get there? For an hour. IT, they already know it. You don't have to convince them. You do not have to convince them at that point that you're an IT company.
Yeah.
You are an IT company. They expect everything and know everything that you are. Wouldn't it be cool to talk about something different? Something that can actually move the needle.
Yeah.
Maybe business.
Right.
Maybe in our sales process, we talk about there's only 3 types of IT companies you can say yes to. And here's the differences. Let's not argue whether they can service you, because if they can't service, you can fire them anyway. But let's really talk about what's important. Number 1 goal. It's the first question I ever ask, or I always ask every potential client, what's your number 1 goal? 99% of the time, they will say, number 1 goal, we just want to work. Okay, if you just want to work, you can't go with a break fix company because what's their number 1 goal?
Yeah, let it break.
So we just eliminated one type of company you want to say yes to.
Yeah.
Or that you might potentially be drawn into because their pricing is right.
Yeah.
Because what smart business guy would ever say yes to somebody that is got diabolically opposed end goals? If they just want to work, break fix this, I just want you to break. I can't make any money if you don't break.
Yeah.
And so ours is more of a consultative sell. But on the business side, I tell people, if you talk about IT for more than 15 minutes on a sales call, most likely you're getting a no.
Yeah. Let me just say, hang on, I need to interject here because this is the first conversation you and I have ever had.
Yeah.
And you have said 2 verbatim quotes from some of my courses already today. You and I are cut from the same cloth, my friend, and the way we think about this. I am not an IT background. I'm a sales background, and I went into IT because I'm like, well, I want an industry that's not going to go anywhere. So technology shouldn't. It'll continue to evolve. But that's why I went into managed services. But I want to say something that, you talked earlier, like they say, I want an IT company, and you go, okay, great. Would love to meet with you. But then people keep showing up and they go, no, here's all my credentials to prove I'm an IT company. Would you like more proof? Would you like to see all the letters I put after my name? Would you like to see my CompTIA certificate? What it reminds me of is when I was an actor, you go into an audition, and most amateur actors, they think of an audition as a talent show.
Yeah.
My job is to show you how amazing I am so that you are amazed by me. And then the most amazing person wins the trophy, which is the job. Yeah. And as you get more mature in your career, you realize, first of all, nobody cares about you. You are a supporting character in the movie of their life.
Yeah.
A casting director's job is not to give a trophy to the most talented person. It's to hire somebody to fill a job posting as fast as they possibly can. They don't care what your process is as an actor. They want to know, will you be on time on Monday? Will you know your lines and hit your mark? And will you be a jackass to work with? That's what they need to resolve, right?
Yep.
And you learn that acting is not a meritocracy. And then I came into sales and realized, oh, business is not a meritocracy either.
No.
They're not going to interview every MSP in Dallas and say, who's the best possible MSP? They're going to spend the minimum amount of effort until they have the minimum threshold of confidence that they can stop thinking about this. That's their job. So you show up thinking this is an IT talent show. Here's the letters after my name. Look how fast I can build a server. I was born in a log cabin in the 1970s. My mother knew when in the crib I was a technologist, and this is how I hacked my whatever when I was in 5th grade. Nobody gives a shit about your story.
Yep.
They want to know, do you have the relative competence and the confidence and the guarantees that I can never have to talk to you about this again, right? That's what I told my accountant. I said, I'll pay you whatever you want if I never have to talk to you about taxes again. And I was not exaggerating.
No, I get it. I'm with you.
I'm like, look, you have the letters after your name. You know the tax codes. I'm going to assume that you're up to date every year on the tax codes. Don't tell me about them. Tell me what I need to know and what I need to give you, because I don't want to talk about taxes because it makes my skin crawl. That's how the average person feels about. They don't care what switch you put in and how you prioritize your VoIP traffic. They don't care. They just want to know, will it resolve my problems?
But most think it's a personal audition.
Yes, exactly.
They treat it just like a job interview.
Yeah.
And if the guy was qualified to hire somebody, he'd do that instead. He knows, I'm not qualified to do this. I need to get someone in here that is highly qualified. And when it's about you, it makes your company look about the size of a gnat.
Yeah.
And that shows no maturity whatsoever.
Right.
I think the biggest the downside to IT and the way that IT is delivered today is, first and foremost, it's a bad business decision. Think about this. Think of one thing that you would say yes to that you don't know what it costs in your business. If StreamYard would have called you and, hey, you want to use our platform for podcast, and they told you all the features, told you everything about it, you loved it, you wanted it, what's the dying question?
What's the cost?
What's it cost? And if StreamYard would have said, what? I don't know, but I'll send you a bill. Would you have said yes?
No.
That is what most IT companies do in that room.
Mm-hmm.
What's the cost? Well, the monthly cost is, and then they take them down this road that no business guy can understand.
Yeah.
And it automatically makes them uncomfortable. So most business owners do one of two things. They digress to the cheapest because why? It's the least risk in their mind, or they hire somebody internal.
Yeah.
Why? Because they know what that internal person costs. Although it's not a good business decision to hire one internal IT guy. But it drives me nuts. I teach people to sell a specific way here.
Mm-hmm.
And not really such in a specific way, but a very specific model of how we do business. Because if you don't differentiate, automatically price becomes number one.
Mm.
And I always tell people, I said, I know you've come back to your office, you've waited 2 weeks, you didn't get the call, and finally you get a hold of them and you're like, oh my God, you probably didn't go with us, but we were just curious why. We want to get better. Well, when the potential client says, well, we went with a cheaper option, nobody ever takes that to heart of, oh shit, what did I do wrong? My price was too high. Obviously, he didn't want really good service. Well, hell yeah, he wanted good service. He wouldn't have talked to you if he didn't.
Yeah.
If he wants good service, basically what he's saying, if it was price, he saw no difference. And I tell people they buy exactly like you did. If you went into a convenience store tomorrow, you wanted to buy a 16-ounce Coke in a plastic bottle, red wrapper, red top. There were 3 shelves of it. One was $1, one was $2, one was $3. Which one would you buy? No, obviously, everybody says $1, right? Why? Because we're trained to buy value from a small child up all the way growing up. So if that's how people buy, then you've got to do one of two things. You've got to differentiate. I said, now, let's say you went to the store and you wanted to ice cold because you wanted to drink it right now. And the ice cold one was $2, the hot one was $1. Which one would you buy?
Right.
Oh, we buy the cold one. There's got to be something that sets the value apart. The problem is everybody polypairs the same shit in sales calls.
Right.
Well, we're 24/7, 365. We monitor. We're on time. We're always there for you. We're special. Everything has a finger pointing back at them. It's about them. It's not about the company.
Yeah.
At the end of it, the owner makes the only smart decision, and that is the cheapest. So
Right.
if you can't differentiate yourself, it doesn't matter.
There's a lot of directions we could go, even with the Coke analogy, because depending on who you ask, there's different providers who claim to do the same thing I do. There's a lot of different people who claim to help an MSP grow their revenue, but there's a lot of different avenues to grow your revenue, right? Between on the lead gen side or the sales side or both or whatever. Somewhere in that journey of revenue operations, there's a lot of nuance and a lot of specific lanes. People fixate on things like brand, for example, which I actually think is mission critical, but I think a personal brand is 10 times more important than a company brand in managed services. Personally. Now, I'm willing to be argued with on that, but here's my case in point. If you had a hot Coca-Cola or an ice cold Shasta Cola and it's 100 degrees out, you're going to buy the Shasta Cola.
Yeah, brand only matters at scale.
Right. Exactly. Brand matters at scale. And I'm not saying brand isn't an important part. What I'm getting at is oftentimes when people are outside of their area of genius or area of comfort, what they'll accidentally do is subconsciously look for the fastest possible excuse to justify their lack of performance. And so then they'll take one of the talk tracks of a vendor to go, oh, well, this is why we're not selling, because we have to invest in brand. And so I'm going to redesign my website again for $50,000. Well, I'm going to, whatever. And so they look for they're looking for silver bullets. What they're really looking for is anything besides personal behavior modification.
They're looking for something that equals them. Mm-hmm. Because see, there's no pain and no change. Change is change. So I basically do a thing called Propel every month at the 20. That's new members come. And I ask first question, just about, what do you think the number one thing that convinces me that you're going to knock it out of the park or not when someone comes to the 20? And they'll fumble all over the damn place. And at the end, I'll just say, are you willing to change? Because if you came here and thought you were going to stay the same and something was going to just miraculously fall out of the sky because you're connected to Tim Conkle, I said, you're in the wrong room.
Yeah.
You need to be in church.
Yeah.
That's where they'd promise you all kinds of stuff. I could go down another rabbit hole alone. But the basic point is they do not want to change. And if you do not change, nothing changes. You have to change before your company can change.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying the company, but I'm not going to change. That shit doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And so I love the analogy of the Shasta. I may use that, by the way.
Please.
In the sense of they have every single excuse on the face of the earth as to why it doesn't work.
Right.
So I hand out a tool at every single one of my propels. If you want to know what's wrong with your company and how to fix it, I've got a tool that will tell you. It will tell you where to start every single time. So you don't have to argue, you don't have to look, you don't have to do anything. It's literally a little compact. It's a mirror.
Yes. I'm so glad it was a mirror. Oh my gosh, Tim. I'm drinking your Kool-Aid right now. Yes, you are everybody's biggest problem is looking at them in the mirror, my friend. This is why people get stuck. I love this.
Your company is you.
Yes.
And it's funny because they'll blame vendors. They'll blame customers. They'll blame, very rare do you find a guy that just says, dude, the way I do it now, I suck.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, people that change inside the 20, big time outpace all their peers.
Oh my God. Yeah. I mean, it's by orders of magnitude. I mean, and they don't just blame vendors, Tim, they blame everything, because every time you fail and you're unwilling or you don't have the awareness or the courage to take it internal, you have to deflect it. So now we're blaming the president and the weather and, Canada. You're blaming when you got a lead the other day and you didn't go, or you waited 7 days to call that contact form back. You gain nothing.
Yeah.
You step into a true position of victim when you are blaming powers over which you have zero influence for your success and happiness, right? You can't change anything. You can't change the fact that there was a global pandemic. You can't change who's in the White House. You can't change your market. You can't change what city you're in. You can't change what language you speak. Or, do you know what I mean? Like, you can't change any of those variables. The only thing you can change is how your attitude, your behavior. You can change those things, and your mindset.
And marketing is a really cool way to play this. They'll do marketing for a month, and because it didn't produce, they could spend $1,000 and think they should get $300,000 out of it. It's crazy. When I tell them in Propel that every qualified lead costs me between $1,000 and $1,200 just for the opportunity to walk in the room, I said, trust me, you spend $1,200 to walk in that room, you'll change your shit.
Yeah,
you'll change your. But you can teach them sales process. You can teach them a sales pitch, which I'm more of a pitch guy, not process. I don't teach process. I teach pitch. The 1 hour, the art of the pitch. And I've had people come back to me, I didn't do it because I didn't think it would work. Well, all your peers are doing it and they're outpacing you by 50 million times. And because you don't think, Dick,
right?
You're way too self-important at this point. No,
this is like a really good inside look at two guys who come across a lot of the same problems. Let me ask you this. You kind of addressed it, but just so that I'm clear, you said that the 20 addresses 2 of the 3 pillars of lead gen, sales, and service delivery. Which are the 2 that you address?
Really, we address the sales and the scale piece. And the reason we do this is because there's tons of people out there that will market for you. Mm-hmm. Marketing to me is not the problem. The problem is they don't do it. Or if they do it, they don't stick to it. And they'll always come back and say, oh yeah, their shit didn't work.
Yeah.
Well, I know a lot of people that are doing pretty good doing that. Right. What do you mean it doesn't work? What did you do? And they'll think a minute, and I'll look at them and I'll say, you didn't do a damn thing. You might have shown up, you might have listened, but you didn't change. You didn't do anything. You thought this stuff is so stupid, I'm not going to do it. Although I paid for it, I'm not going to try it. And so I think marketing, now, I have a very, very, very robust marketing side of our company, and 90% of our lead flow is inbound, which is moment of need, moment of pain. So the marketing's pretty easy. Sales, typically they don't have a clue, but I think it starts with the model of what are you selling?
Yeah.
They're not buying IT, they're buying peace of mind. They're buying, we just want it to work. You are 100% correct when you said they don't give a shit what switches you use, what tool sets you use, and all that stuff. Now, an MSP, they'll argue all day long that the tools are the most important thing. They're not.
Right.
You're not going to get a customer and keep a customer because you got Kaseya versus ConnectWise, or ConnectWise versus Kaseya or Ninja One or whatever. Mm-hmm. That tool is irrelevant. And so we really execute on the pitch and then scale. In other words, delivery. How do we deliver a service that you would get from a $100 million MSP if you're a $1 million MSP? We execute that.
So let's dive into that a little bit. So when talk to me about the pitch, tell me more about what you mean, because what you tell me if I'm assuming wrong, but assuming 90% of your conversations, as you said, are inbound, which means moment of need and moment of pain, as you put it. So the sales cycle should reflect the prospect's state of mind. They're like, hey, I need an IT company. You don't have to set up why they need an IT company yet, the way you would on an outbound motion, which is a slower sale. But so you're using the word pitch, but I want to know, some people have conflicting nomenclature, so I want to make sure everybody's clear on what you mean by that. Talk to me about helping when you coaching MSP on, hey, the phone rings, what do you do now? Like,
Yep.
Explain that a little bit to me.
So typically pitch to me is they've set an appointment up and you've got a 1 hour witching period, that 1 hour. Now I talk about the things that happen after, follow up. I talk about if you do audits on the front side, you have a much, much greater chance of getting a no than a yes. Why? Every yes runs to a no. So the more time you put in your sales cycle, trying to convince them that their shit's all broken, tore up and all that stuff, they knew that the minute they called you. So why not try to convince them? And I always teach that if you sell on fear, you'll lose on fear. If you sell on trust, you'll keep them forever. Fear is, I take an audit, I go in and then come back and tell them the world's falling apart. Because what's going to happen is you're going to do that. And at some point, somebody's going to offer them a free audit. I'm going to come in and audit, tell them the world's falling apart. And guess what? You trained your customer to believe that crap. So I tell them no audits, no onboarding fees.
Okay. So yeah, you want low friction.
So now keep your sell to one thing. If you have an onboarding fee, an audit, now you got to sell an audit. You got to sell an onboarding fee. Now you haven't even got to sell managed services. So keep it simple. Keep it very forward as to what they ask for. We need an IT company to manage our IT. You're selling them managed services. You're going to find everything else after that. But the pitch is the 1 hour that you go in and you sit with them. I tell every MSP, if you talk about IT and their company more than 15 minutes, the first 15 minutes, you've lost that customer. Ask them first, what's your number one goal? And then ask, what's going on? How can we best help you? They'll tell you every problem in the world. It'll boil down to one of two things, only one of two things. So your pitch has to equal the answer to one of those two things.
Yeah.
Both those things, really. But what are they? You'll never find yourself in that room unless it's about service or money, unless an anomaly. And I always tell people, don't play with what ifs. Well, yeah, but what if they just started their company? That's not who you're going to talk to most of the time.
Sure.
How are you going to talk to a company doing IT? So, first 15 minutes, that's it. You cannot go over 15 minutes talking about that or the other. The remaining 45 minutes is literally just helping them make a good business decision. I teach to always thank them for their time. It's the most precious asset on the face of the earth. And I'll make a personal promise to you. For this hour, I will give you everything you need to make a great decision, whether it's me. Doesn't matter who you choose. I'm going to give you all the information from 30 years plus of experience in doing this.
Yeah.
Then we lay out 3 types of IT companies. That's it. There's only 3 types. And then we equal them out as to what you get. And 3 types, we're only talking about the model of how they do business.
Yeah, sure.
Example,
which is
break fix, an MSP, and then we do MID. We all rebranded MID, which just stands for Managed IT Department, because that's what we tell people we're going to be. And so then I lay out the differences between those 3, and we just happen to be a whole lot better model than the first 2.
So tell me,
the customer exactly what they pay for IT.
Tell me, like I'm a dumb guy, what's the difference between an MSP and an MID? That is about staff aug or something?
No. So if you start at the beginning, break fix, if their number one goal is just to work, break fixes, then name one good behavior you pay for in a break fix company. If you hire a break fix company, name one good behavior you pay for. There's none. You only pay for them. If they're slow, you pay them more money. You only reward bad behavior. So what do you get in a break fix company? Ultimately, and I'm not saying break fix companies are not honest and all the other things, but there's no check and balance.
Yeah, the incentives are conflicting.
They are there for money. Now go to an MSP. You pay a monthly fee plus what? How's everything else done? It's done break fix. I've already showed them where break fix is the absolute worst business decision on the face of the earth. MSPs love to have break fix in their stuff. Now they'll tell you they don't, but how do they do? Everything's out of scope. Server fails on a weekend. What do? Quote with labor. How is that labor dictated out to them? It is dictated out by an hourly rate, just like break fix.
Yeah.
And they'll never make a good business decision for you. Let me explain that.
Okay.
I'll use stories because I'm a storyteller. Let's say that you had a print server that's 5 years old. You get a little letter from Dell that says that the server's at the end of life. What is an MSP quote? What do you tell the customer then?
A new print server?
Of course, that's where the money is. Wouldn't it be a novel idea to actually be a real consulting company that says, you know what? It's just a print server. We have a BDR on it, which means we could bring it back up in 15, 20 minutes by virtualizing it on the backup device. There's two options. You can either replace the server or we can extend the warranty for 2 years. It's up to you because it's not high impact. Why did they not do that? Because there's no money in it.
Mm-hmm.
They look to do the absolute best thing for themselves, not the customer.
Right.
So I do all this, and then I tell them about MID. MID is easy. We're 100% flat. You can buy an hour of our time period in a story. So you know exactly what you pay me every month, whether you grow or you contract. You know exactly what you pay me. It is just like having a real IT department that has salaries and a budget, and you never get surprised. Also, what would we would always say that extend the warranty is an option. Why? Because it's no longer about labor to get paid. It is about truly making them work. Because the better they work, guess what I get to do? If I get one bucket of money and they don't break, how much of that money do I get to keep?
Right.
But if they break, who pays for the break? I do.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a different way of getting to the end of the bucket, but it's just a better business decision. And I always say, business people make business decisions, not IT decisions.
Right.
So I thought you was going to wow them with IT. All you did was confuse them. But you talk about business, all of a sudden it's, oh. So basically what you're saying is, the better IT company you are, the more money you make. Yes, this is, and I would automatically say, yeah, this is why most people come to us. They are looking for a more mature IT company that's gotten to the place that really we know what it takes to make your IT work and what it costs you to get that delivered to you without this.
Right. So do you, in this MID model, are you marking up hardware?
I think anybody sells hardware should mark up the hardware.
Because they need workstations replaced and the critical stuff, but you're just saying that you're not incentivized to charge them a $500 workstation setup fee.
Think about this. So let's say that server, you're going to replace that server. What's going to Tim made his few points on the server. Why? Because I'm going to carry it on my books for you for 30 days or whatever that is.
Yeah.
Or you get a proposal that's got the server with the markup. And then it's got 15 hours of labor. Guess what? Let's say it only takes them 8 hours. Do they refund 7 hours to them?
Oh, God, no.
No. Think about that for a minute. So how did they come up with 15 hours? I call this rectum reasoning, by the way. They pulled straight out of their ass.
Right.
And I always tell people, this is the rectum reasoning portion of the program.
Yeah.
It's just like pricing. How does most MSPs price their offering? They pull this.
Yeah, what they think, it's based off market appetite, which is a way of saying, how much can I get from this person? That's how much it costs.
If they go and they sell and they get a yes, they're like, oh, wow, that's a great price. Was it? And part of what I teach people is, how do you price your offering based on your market? Not based on some fairyland crap, but how do you truly price where you're not the most expensive, you're not the cheapest, but you're in the market and you make a great margin? If you look at my customers, there's not a single customer that pays a different price. I don't care if they got 1,000 endpoints or 10. It's all the same.
Per user.
Per user.
But here's the thing, Tim, this is what we should spend the last few minutes on, is this MID idea. I mean, it's a fully absorbed managed contract. I've talked to some guys who they're like, hey, projects were included, or there was one guy I talked to, and I won't say his name because I don't have his permission to share this story, so I won't point it to him, but he had a brand differentiator. We don't mark up hardware. That's why I asked you about that. And I thought, why are you leaving like $200,000 in margin on the table every year? And he said, this is a cultural decision that we made based off of the direct competitors in this market he was in, which was in Anaheim, the Orange County area.
Yeah.
And he was like, we want them to have the best hardware. And what we found is that the best hardware had the lowest margin. So I was like, he said, I solved my salesperson's problem. They no longer get incentivized to add margin to hardware because he wanted to put in things. So instead of selling, Ruckus in Meraki with huge licensing fees that are completely unnecessary, when you could just stick Aruba in there, and then everybody, that was his way of being like, we actually want everybody to win at the same time. But anyway, you're talking about MID. Here's the assumption that you have to be able to make to sell in this way and be competitive is that you have a very mature technical operation.
100%. Think about this. You got it. And every single business by guy gets it. Oh, so I don't really need to worry about whether you have great people, great this and great. Your model proves it out.
Yeah.
Because if not, you wouldn't be in business.
Right.
It's a crazy dynamic. If you look at the think about this for a minute. He's got a culture that we don't mark up hardware. That's a really cool stick that I'm going to destroy in 30 seconds if I'm asked about it.
Yeah.
Why am I going to do that? Well, because how often do you buy hardware? Desktop every 3 to 5 years, servers every 5 to 7. You're literally going to make a decision based on something that doesn't happen very often, where labor happens every day.
Right.
I mean, and I'm one that I think every single thing should be included. Everything. Except there's 2 things we don't include in our model. Or there's 2 things I can't tell you what they cost.
Okay.
Things you can touch. In other words, additional hardware. I don't know if you're gonna grow and add 10 people. I don't know that. You're gonna buy those 10 machines, but I can't foresee that. I'm not a witch or a warlock.
Yeah.
Or a clairvoyant, whatever the hell they are.
Yeah.
And the other thing is software. If you had 10 more employees, obviously you need 10 more licenses of 365. You have to pay for that.
Sure.
But when it comes to labor, you will never pay an hour labor. If you have a server that fails on the weekend and we fix it on the weekend, you're only going to pay for whatever hardware we needed to fix that.
Right. So here's what I'm getting at is an MSP is listening to this who's going, well, yeah, that's really great. But by the way, I have no qualms with this model, but this model rests on, for an MSP who's listening to this going, maybe I should do it the Tim way.
Yeah.
And I should basically go to the MID, essentially a fully absorbed, all you can eat with projects included is like a longer, windbag way of saying MID. Okay. Yep. Where you have to be able to you have to have your operation so airtight that your dedicated technician hour spent per user is so low that you have headway to be able to handle emergencies without having to bill for emergencies. You have to have staffing all the time to not have to charge to have people on call who have to wake up and then you bill $4.50 an hour for them to do it in the middle of the night. And you also have to have such a good technical roadmap for your clients. You have to be so invested in them from a VCIO level or whatever you call that, right? Where you're actually forecasting projects and executing projects on their behalf. So what does an MSP say or do when they go, I don't have the buying power. I don't have the staffing to be able to afford to do this for less than $500 a user?
Great question. You join the 20. Think about this for a minute. Let's say that you're part of the 20 and you run into, you need a project done. You don't have the people internal. So you have two options in life, right? You go hire somebody or you outsource it. Wouldn't it be cooler if, so the 20 ecosystem is everybody standardized and does business the same way. So I could literally cherry pick a 20 member anywhere, put them into a role, don't have to train them. They already know. So let's say you got yourself in a place that you needed 2 people for. Let's say you just brought on a brand new customer. You have to onboard that customer. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And there are 10 locations. Oh shit. How am I going to do it? Well, they just reach into the 20 and say, "Hi, I need help onboarding." 2 or 3 people get on a plane, fly in, put their shirts on, onboard that customer, get back on the plane and fly out. I literally just paid for just this amount of time. I kept all excess labor off my P&L. So this is things that happen at scale. So you've got little MSPs operating at scale of $100 million MSP. Why? Because they have everything at their fingertips, but it's at consumption.
Right. So you figured out sort of this white label franchise model where they're still their own brand and identity, right? But they're powered by the 20, which is the backend ecosystem. So I get to use the Domino's pizza tracker, but I still have Cacello's, corner bakery pizzeria.
100%. So you never get in trouble. Let's even take it a step further. Why would 10 companies all have a high-end exchange guy on paper? Well, because they don't have any way of providing exchange, from on-prem to 365 or from Google to 365 or 365 to Google. They don't have that expertise.
Yeah.
We need it because we have a customer. Wouldn't it be better just to be able to reach into the ecosystem and say, "Hey, I need somebody." Now think about this. It takes dead time on another company's P&L that has it.
Yeah.
Helps pay for that employee. So it gives on both sides of the coin.
Sure.
But why would all 10 have that? It's the same thing of why would 10 companies build a help desk? You need 10 managers. You need at least 10 people to have a help desk, right?
Mm-hmm.
We just aggregate it all together.
Right.
So now you got $1 million MSP with a help desk of over 150 people.
Right.
That runs at scale that you don't have to train because we all do things the same way.
Right.
This is such a novel idea. It amazes me that MSPs don't line up.
And plus you've got the Galaxy tier PAX 8 pricing, right? Or you've got the best possible buying power. Let me ask you this, and this is maybe an unfair question to ask you, but I'm just going to go for it anyway. What if somebody is like, "Hey, that's for whatever reason, that's not in my stars in the short term, but I like the idea of the MID model."
Yeah.
Any recommendations to somebody on how they position to be able to compete without having to essentially double their price?
Yeah, no, I get it. Because you can't double your price.
Right.
Nobody can say yes to you.
Right.
I'm be as frank as I know how to be.
Mm-hmm.
You don't. If you're a standalone MSP, you cannot afford to do this.
Yeah.
Let me tell you the byproduct of this, though. Take a break fix company. On average, they charge $150 an hour. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
How much can a technician make per hour in a break fix company? They're $150 an hour.
Yeah.
They can only make $150, right? In
Right.
the MID model, your technician should average between $500 and $1,000 an hour. Why?
How are you doing that?
Economy of scale. In other words, everything is just this, right? So a technician, instead of having to work an hour to make $150, can literally do 5 different jobs in that hour at $150 each, maybe, or whatever.
Yeah.
So the model itself works out to where if you're a good IT company and you do this right, you're going to make tons more money.
Right.
Why? Because you get to, in break fix, you only get to charge $150 an hour if it's broken. In our scenario, you're always charging.
Right. Right. And this is something I think it's important for all listeners. And again, this is like a ubiquitous truth, regardless of if you're the 20. This is not contingent on the 20, but the thing you said right up at the top of wealth creation is you got to look at the simplest, dumbest way to think of this is your multiple goes up a lot when your EBITDA crosses certain thresholds.
100%.
And if you can pool a bunch of EBITDAs together, all of you immediately turn the dollar in your bank account now is immediately worth a $5 bill, simply because of the collaboration between all of you saying, we're going to put all of our $1 into a pot, and then we pull out 4 each and our dollar's still in there. That's just the nature of what, but now this isn't all song and dance. M&A there's a lot of people try and fail at M&A, right? Yeah. Like one of the questions I asked Chris Day a month or two ago when I interviewed him was, which is cheaper, buying a customer or organic growth for a customer? And he was kind of like, I don't really know how to answer that, but it kind of, because there's different answers to that question. But in reality, there's a lot more customers that you could buy than customers that you could go and find, because already over 50% of the market, they said by 24, 65% of SMBs would be reliant on an MSP. I don't know the current number now, but a lot of them, right? And it's expensive, and most contracts are standardized to 12 to 36 months now, which means the buying windows are getting shorter. The competition is getting steeper. So getting organic clients is getting harder and harder, which is why people are like, I will literally pay for the next 7.5 years of profit for that in order to buy that customer. So if I can't improve the operation, I won't make money on them for 8 years. Yeah. And still it's worth it to these firms who have the capital.
The funny thing about M&A is, and I tell people all the time, 99% of MSPs should never M&A.
Interesting.
Why isn't that? So let's take $1 million MSP.
Okay.
They were to be a $2 million MSP. Okay. And let's say that they're both worth the same thing, a 5x multiple. So you buy that $1 million MSP, you give them a 5x multiple, let's say they're 200,000 EBITDA, that's $1 million. Mm. On average, 20% attrition. So you just lost $200,000 before you ever started.
Yeah.
Why? You're going to lose $200,000 worth of customers. Now, why is it a bad business decision to buy it? Because you're both a 5x, which means it doesn't move the needle. Mm. Zero room for mistakes. Now, example, us. If I buy a 5x MSP or $1 million MSP and it's worth a 5x, the second I move it from their P&L to mine, it's now worth, that same EBITDA is worth a 15x.
Yeah.
So in other words, $2 million was just created out of thin air before I ever even started. Yeah. So I can make $2 million worth of mistakes before it costs me anything. Now, take 20% of a $1 million, 20% EBITDA company that at $200,000, 20% would be what? $40,000. 40,000 times a 5x is what?
250? 200?
4 times 5 is 20.
200K.
200,000, right? I'm still up $1.8 million.
Yeah.
That's why you can only really do M&A at scale. Now, some people say, well, man, how can I grow? Well, you got two options. You can organically grow to a point to where you cross the 5 million EBITDA threshold, which gets you up to 8, 9x multiple. Now you've got a 4x bump between the two, so you could start thinking about it. But I would even argue it's easier just to be acquired by something like the 20 that says, hey, we'll let you reinvest back in.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Great example of this. I bought a $2 million company 36 months ago. If we sold tomorrow, that $2 million company that the guy would typically go out and sell for $2 million is sitting at over $6 million. Completely eliminated risk because he doesn't own the company. He stayed and did his thing. So literally in 3 years, he 3x'd his top line. Mm. The value of the top line, not even the EBITDA. Mm. That's how you create wealth in this area. Right. You don't do it by doing stupid M&A. Now, here's the other thing. If you look at us, we're one of the only MSPs at scale that are 100% integrated. So when we buy, it's one brand, and then we integrate everything into our playbook. One set of books. So I bought 44 companies in the last 40 months, and it's all integrated. It looks like one company. It works like one company. It has billing at one place. So you get all that economy of scale.
Sure.
The majority of M&A players are saying, oh shit, that's a lot of work. We're going to let these guys work independent, which means you get no economy of scale. You still have to have accounting. Right. You still have to have accounting at every place. You still have to have sales at every place. You still have to have field services all those things have to exist. We still have to have a CEO that runs every single place. That might not call it a CEO, right?
Yeah, sure, right.
They have to keep all that infrastructure. So M&A to me is a killer game to play. Why? Because it's going to make a lot of MSPs really, really wealthy and a lot of them really, really, really poor.
Sure.
This is one decision you keep playing with as an MSP.
Right. I'll just say that, so as a guy, I coach sometimes people down at they have one client, they just quit their job. And then the 10 million, 17 million, $25 million firms. And obviously they have the same set of problems at different levels, right? Like their problems are the same. How do I get more people to buy my services? That's what every MSP in the world is asking that question. Yep. And usually, by the way, the $20 million ones, I don't think I've ever personally met more than maybe Dave Segraves is the only guy who did it organically. Like they all were a bunch of $1 million MSPs that lassoed together, or $3 million MSPs. So we merged with a break fix guy when I was at like $1.5 million because I have a really specific skill, Tim. I can get break fix clients to buy managed services. And what we gained was a strategic staffing collaboration, which the talent pool, first of all, I actually think the talent pool is way bigger than people think it is. And I actually don't think there's a shortage of genius out there. I think there's a lot of other problems why people won't join your company. And it's probably that you should probably look in that compact mirror that Tim gives you at the next thing you go to of his. But I think that there are opportunities. So this is a data point to maybe throw into to contextualize some of the things that you're saying here is I do think that there's a lot of strategic partnership at the very small level, at the like sub 1 million, sub 1.5 million, where you've got key personnel, like this guy's a PowerShell expert, this guy's an AI expert, this guy's a network expert, and we were all very small. And then we kind of became a more holistic offering by mashing together and combining skills, combining staff. And then you can start getting a little bit more buying power, a little bit more footprint. But would you classify that as a different category of sort of traditional M&A that you were referring to before?
100%, because typically, little bitty like that, sometimes you're just trading where he has a job.
Yeah, it's an acqui-hire.
Yeah. You're not really paying real money for it most of the time.
Sure, right. There's not usually a big CapEx on for the transaction itself. It's seller financed or it's an acquisition of employees and stuff. Yeah.
You can do that.
Mm-hmm.
It's just super slow to get anywhere. I grew organically to over 30 million before I ever acquired anybody. Why did I do that? Well, because I wanted to move my multiple to a new place, where you can actually have buffer between the 2 point and do what I'm telling you. I was at a conference and a guy asked a question. He goes, "Hey, I'm 2 million and I want to do what you've done." And I said, "So let's talk about that for a minute. So you want to acquire at $30 million worth of business, you're $2 million right now. Let's say you're going to let them invest back in and you're going to do that, do the play like that." I said, "You need $20 million to buy it. Where do you get the $20 million?
Mm-hmm.
So SBA won't loan you $20 million.
Mm-mm.
I think their cap is what, 5 or 6 now. So you need $20 million to do that. Are you willing to go in debt $20 million to get there? There's just better ways of doing it.
Yeah.
And you can make lots of money. Now, I have a friend of mine. that built a $50 million MSP. It's for sale now under LOI. So it's going to be bought. So he spent all of his adult life building this business. Mm-hmm. What did he end up with? He was $3.5 million when he started. So in other words, he could have sold his company for probably $3.5 million that day that he made this decision. When the sale is final, he'll walk with $3.1 million. He still has cap gains and all the other stuff. He owns like 3% of the company. There's a right way of doing this stuff, and there's a wrong way of doing this. Me, I don't know of anybody else in the channel, and I'd love to be corrected if I'm wrong, and if there's another one, kudos to them. This is great. Yeah. But at scale, big company, mm-hmm. and I still own it. No PE. Now, I'm not anti-PE. I'm just saying there's a time and place for PE. Yeah. But if you're going to get wealthy, you do not go to P&E, or you don't go to a P&E firm and say, hey, I'm a $5 million MSP. I want to aggregate a bunch of other MSPs in here, and I need the money to do it. And so they supply you the money, but they take all the equity.
Right. That's let me just say this, that I'm not anti-PE. I don't want to make any waves, but I will say that one of the reasons I'm excited by you and what you're doing, and one of the reasons I think that you're actually a force for good in the channel, is that there's actually not many people who are creating wealth in the channel. There's a lot of people who are pulling wealth out of the channel.
100%.
And that's what aggregating now, in many ways, I think part of the reason that VCs and private equity hasn't consolidated the industry yet is that the industry was not actually mature and standardized enough to do so, the way they'd done accounting and all the other professional services. But now that we're hitting this point, we're going to see more and more of these dollars. And I talk to them. By the way, Tim, I think I've had 4 conversations with an acquisition platform who come to me and they say, hey, can you help us with the post-acquisition organic growth strategy?
Yeah.
That happens to me all the time, because first of all, most people in private equity have never sold a damn thing in their life, right? Yeah. Now they've got great chops, don't get me wrong. They sing for their supper. They're worth what you pay them, but they don't know how to walk into a 20-person accounting firm and shake hands with Brenda and get her to sign your paper. They've never done that before.
You know what's funny too? If you look at M&A, we did it the opposite. We figured out organic growth.
Yeah.
Which means every new company I buy, I just turn on the engine for organic growth, and it just starts working.
Yeah.
You got big platforms out there that literally bought the same problems over and over and over and over. Think about this. Go back to the $1 million guy. $1 million guy can't grow, so what does he want to do? He wants to buy $1 million.
Yeah.
His only way to grow now is that. Now, wouldn't it have been cool if he could have bought a company that's organically growing and was just hitting on all cylinders?
Yeah.
They're rare.
Right.
Or rare. And so what ends up happening is your only growth comes from acquisition, which means your multiple is going to be crap.
Yeah.
Why? If you quit acquiring, guess what happened?
Right.
You start dying.
Right. Exactly. And those companies that are growing, by the way, the reason they're rare is because they're not for sale, because they're like, well, no, I'm growing 30% year over year. I'm going to be worth 4 times more in 2 years. When I cross this threshold, I'm not going to sell to you today. So they don't really need to sell their business, and they're not interested in it. I've got the amount of clients I talk to that I work with who are up 70,000, 100,000 MRR year over year, and they're $1 million, $2 million business. It's like, that is rocket speed growth. Yeah. When you look at how much work it is to onboard a managed service client, to bring on 12 to 20 new clients a year. Yeah. I don't know I know very few organizations that aren't platforms that can even do that.
Yeah, because we bring on 100, 120,000 a month new business.
Well, sure, because you've got,
which is scale, right?
Because you just have scale. Exactly. You have a lot of humans, a lot of markets, a lot of ponds, a lot of ad campaigns running. So Tim, let me just say this. You've been a real gem today. I appreciate that you've let me ask you so many questions. I'm excited by what you're doing for the channel. I really am. I think that MSPs who let me say this on your behalf, or on behalf of, I guess, everybody listening. Your objectives for what you want to do with your business is something that you need to decide for yourself. But you need to know, like, what do I want to be when I grow up is the question that, Tim, you and I need to be asking ourselves every day. Why am I doing any of this?
Yeah.
And if the answer is, I hated my boss, I want to work from home and drink wine with lunch, so I went out on my own, and now you're stuck in this job you can't get out of. You're making $200 a year, but you're losing all your hair and you can't sleep, and you're going, I don't know what the hell to do next. Then obviously that you've got a slew of problems there, and we'd love to help you. But if you're going, my goal is wealth creation, and the number one objective I have is wealth creation, then selling in a strategic way is one of the lowest risk ways of objectively increasing your net worth. If your goal is, I want to build a business and give it to my daughter, don't call Tim, probably, right?
Don't call Tim.
Yeah. If you know how to do that, then go do it. Then you call me, because I'll teach you how to do that, right? I'm the organic growth guy, but I think M&A, it's an important, like, for a long time and earlier in my career, it was a little intimidating to me because I felt like we were Montagues and Capulets because I'm organic growth. But the more I've learned about the channel, the more I've realized both are incredibly reliant on one another. Yeah. And actually, when done, there is an altruistic way for people to help with organic growth, and there's an altruistic way to do M&A, and there's a shitty way to do both where everybody's stomping on each other's necks to get on top. Of course, we all know those names, and Tim will, we don't even have to say them. We know the people we're talking about. But I just wanted this to be, we've never really talked about M&A in detail on this podcast, and I think everybody should know where you want to go. When I started my business, I remember talking to Nigel Moore, and I said, this is what I'm doing. And I told him, I want to sell this business for this much money in this many years. He goes, who are you going to sell it to? And I go, probably you.
You're not soft.
Because I already knew, I'm like, look, there's like 6 people who could buy this. And Nigel just chuckled and his heart was warm. He loved that I said that, He's probably somebody like you, man. Like, this is what I'm building it for. That's part of why I'm asking you advice.
Yeah.
What would you buy is like, how should I grow this? And what would make it compelling to a guy like you? So I've been thinking about exit from the beginning because I've learned my lesson of cornering myself into a job I can't get out of where everybody's relying on me. And now I'm like, well, this is way worse than just being an executive where I could just like go play golf whenever I want. And, it's not on my shoulders. So really ask yourself what you want, listener. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What do you want to be when you grow up? And then you got to start making a plan to get there. That's your responsibility. Your dreams are your responsibility. But you've got these real rocket ships that could take you, if you know the direction you're going. Don't get on a rocket ship unless it's going the exact coordinates you're going. You know what I mean? Because when you go fast, 1 degree of difference in direction, that spread gets wider and wider. So make sure that guys like Tim and I are that you're working with a Sherpa that knows the mountain you're about to climb. And then, it could really help you.
And I say it this way, only a fool follows in the footsteps of a man not going where you want to go.
Boom.
So if you want to create wealth, do it in the footsteps of a man that's done it, not in the footsteps of somebody that you're not sure. And I'll say this, anybody that starts a company as an entrepreneur, if wealth is not your objective, you were just looking for a job.
Mm.
Wealth is the most unselfish thing an entrepreneur can do. And I know it sounds weird to say it that way, but a wealthy entrepreneur provides wealth not only for himself, but for his family, those around him.
Yeah.
That's a true entrepreneur.
Yeah.
Anything else is, I didn't want people to tell me what to do and I hated my job, so I just created my own job. Well, guess what? That job is just like any other job. It is dead end when you do it in the context of wealth management or wealth. I'm a big proponent of creating wealth for MSPs. not creating wealth for just anybody.
Yeah.
But it's to a certain degree giving back to this industry, because I'm telling you, man, this is the easiest industry in the world to become wealthy in right now. There is no other industry that's easier than this right here. If you want a sure thing right now. Now, I don't know how long it'll last.
Sure.
And I'll even say this, with AI and all that stuff out there, dude, I'm afraid of what an MSP might look like 10 years from now, especially for the guy that just says, I'm going to go at it alone. He doesn't have the money to spend to really create an AI practice.
Right.
It is going to be, because we come together and with this in mind, we're better together.
Yeah. Right. Right. I love this, man. I the way you're thinking about it, and even I think that's a good note to leave us on, is that an entrepreneur who is a true entrepreneur is pursuing making their world bigger.
Yeah.
And an entrepreneur who is desperate for control ends up making the world smaller. You leave a company because you're afraid of not being in control, and then you become the culprit for all the problems, and then you sort of collapse in on yourself internally, right? But a true entrepreneur who is interested in actual, for lack of a better term, divine inspiration, like innate, making something that did not exist before. You really have to be interested in making your world bigger. And I think collaborating with people and letting your ego get out of the way and all that is just such a great way to do it. Tim, I've kept you way longer than we had scheduled. I really appreciate it. If anybody wants to talk to you or hear more about what you can do for them, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Just go to the20.com, and there's a form on there they can fill out.
Okay.
There's a phone number on there. And I'm a pretty open book. I mean, I take calls from MSPs every day that sometimes just want to, hey, I don't know where I'm at. I don't know what I'm doing. Can you kind of talk to me? And I'm probably the most accessible guy.
Yeah.
When it comes to this stuff.
Yeah.
And the reason being is I honestly want MSPs to knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
I take it personal, you know?
Sure. You actually want to help. And frankly, you don't have any incompetence to hide. So that's why you're available. So I appreciate you, man. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I appreciate the time, and keep doing what you're doing.
Cool.